Welcome to Meristem Seeds Cup of Joe. On this episode, Ben summarizes some phone calls he's gotten this week, from replant to wireworm to deciding which varieties to plant based on location and more. He shows a GDU graph tool you can use. Hear about rapid growth syndrome in corn and why it happens. And check out EarthOptics 2025 Predictive Ag Report linked in the description.
Hi, this is Joe Meristem. Welcome to Meristem Seeds Cup of Joe. Today we have our regulars. We have Ben, Dylan, and Lynn. And Ben's going to start off first.
Yeah, so I had a couple phone calls this week talking about whether it be replant decisions, or we have some guys that take triticale or rye off and they're putting corn in afterwards. They like the flexibility, plus they need either the silage or the grain. So one of the questions I guess I had was, I'm in such and such county in Iowa, and which variety do you suggest? We have some flexibility here. Taking stuff off at silage or taking it to grain if the weather forecast cooperates like it did the past couple of years for long, warm, dry harvests. So one of the tools that I always use, I'm glad, and this is going to affect some of the later planted guys, I guess, down south of 70 that have been struggling to get in the fields. How full of a maturity can I stand if my number one concern is making sure I get through grain fill and at the right time? So we're just going to pick, I'll just pick a random county down here, Macoupin County, Illinois, create the GDU graph. And when the GDU graph pulls up on the screen there, what it shows you is it's going to ask for different planting dates. It's going to ask for relative maturity and black layer dates, and then it maps out it gives you a map of what your earliest freezes, your latest freezes, and when the product's probably going to go through silking and reach black layer. Once we're at black layer, it's physiologically mature, and it's just a matter of drying down. So in a year like this, let's say we get an open window because next week looks to be fairly favorable. So let's go June 5th in our hypothetical scenario here. If we go to June 5th, we can go ahead and pull here. They have 113 day pulled up. Let's roll that down. Our favorite, one of my favorite numbers in the lineup, they're all really good, but is our 2512C30. If you go to our book, it will actually give you the flowering GDUs and the black layer GDUs, and the black layer GDUs are 2597. That's the important one for what we're looking for. So I go in here and I plug in 2597, and it should change our graph up a little bit. And if you're interested about looking at flowering, that's pretty close to where we're at on the 2512 for flowering. And we roll back down and we see where we are at, what the earliest possible in the last 20 years chance of reaching black layer, what the average over the past 20 years of reaching black layer would be, and it doesn't give us the graph that would be on the latest side. But this goes to show that more likely than not, with the relative data that we've had over the past 20 years, you are going to reach black layer before the first freezing frost. We were talking before filming, one of the things to think about when we're planting corn later, the only reason that you switch is to make sure that you can get through grain fill, specifically black layer, and making sure that you have dry down. So if dry down is like your number one concern, you are probably going to take a yield penalty by going to an earlier number than you would if you would stick to the original plan. And hopefully, we don't have anybody, June 15th, June 20th, because that's definitely going to push you into a time where you may not get to black layer. You're going to end up with lighter test weight and end up with yield penalty in that direction.
This is a great site too, and for the guys who planted early, they can put their information into, and they'll find out when they're going to have harvest too.
Yep.
So I mean, it can work on the early end to plan, and then also on the late end to plan also.
Yep. When we were dealing with this in 2018 or 19, Iowa State was the one, Virgil Schmidt, who is our Iowa State agronomist, extension agronomist. He also liked to add in a different tool that I also have pulled up, and this is the Purdue maturity decision for hybrids, so basically for late planting, because as a corn plant gets planted later, it actually takes less GDUs to get to pollination. So because that plant can sense it's later based on lunar effects or solar effects, it knows that it's going to not have as many GDUs to get to pollination. So Purdue actually has a tool that they use to estimate what the actual GDU to black layer would be. So we can use these two tools in combination. What did I say? We were at 2597.
With 112-day maturity.
With 112-day maturity. Expected planting date, so here we have to plug in however many days after May 1st. So that number would be 40 if we are still talking about the June 10th time frame. The actual number that Purdue uses is 2325. We go back to the second tool and we can scroll back up here, if I can remember the number, 2325, and we would plug in 2325 into this MRCC website, and it actually puts us at our, it actually gives us our, in the past 20 years, what the last date of black layer would be based on the variation in the heat accumulation, and where our average would be here at September 14th and whatever date that is, October 3rd. So those two tools in combination are good for late planting. They're also good for, as Joe stated, when are we going to be going through pollination, or what's the range for pollination, where it should be, and how soon we're going to be at black layer. So
I would even say with all of our products, the dry down is phenomenal on all our whole portfolio. That's nothing, should not be a huge issue when you're truly thinking about many of the products.
Right, and some guys will cheat the maturity a little bit, and I don't really play around with the games. Our originators give us the numbers. I plug the numbers in, and so everything is all based off of the same charts, and we use what we have. So if they say it's 112 day, I believe that it's 112 day. So we
not 113 or 114.
Right, to try to get a little extra yield out of it.
And some companies do that though. They're a day or two later than what we would call the real number.
Right. So that's one of the tools.
Yeah, just to surmise that, I think to put it in maybe a smart note version is when we talk about this, if you're truly late planted, full field scenario, we're very confident that you can right now plant almost any hybrid in our portfolio and be fine. Where we're getting into the questions that maybe we would go to someone like here locally 106 or 108 days if you're spotting in a little bit of a replant. And the one, for example, we talked about just a couple days ago is they have a 111, 112 day, no true drying capability, so they're trying to match that field so they're able to continue through harvest and kind of get that. Then we play a little bit of games with hybrid there, but if you are a full field scenario, no issues going in with as full as you can get to try to maximize that yield.
Yep.
And we've taken it clear out to June 15th, June 20th here in southeast Iowa and had very cromulent yield, 150 plus bushel off of 111, 112 day corn.
Yep. So definitely a tool to keep in mind. It'll help you make decisions. We can get as early as 106 day for a large quantity of corn. We even have a little bit of 102 day that we'll be launching next year in the lineup if we needed a few bags for the guys further in the north to help spike stuff in. So second thing that I had on my list was I received a couple phone calls and I was listening to a couple podcasts, and they're talking about rapid growth syndrome in corn, and I wanted to just touch on what that is and why it happens. So rapid growth syndrome, also known as buggy whipping, is a phenomenon in corn where the leaves get tightly wrapped and twisted, especially when the corn experiences rapid growth, often triggered by a sudden shift in growing conditions like warm, sunny weather, followed by a period of cool, cloudy weather, and then it warms back up again. We've had that this year. Why can it be visually noticed? Is because the corn almost looks like it's got like 2,4-D injury, because the plant starts to wrap up tight, it's not unfurling the way it wants to, kind of makes the corn plant look lazier. Some of the things to note about it, the rapid growth rate caused favorable conditions can lead to that leaf wrapping. I already said that. Certain herbicides can play a role in this as well. So some of the group 15 products that we often use as residual in corn. If in agronomy, the answer is it always depends. But if we have a handful of things working at the same time, whether it be the weather, may have a little bit of an impact. You could have this group 15 causing some issues with leaf wrapping, and then hybrid genetics. Some of the corn hybrids are slightly more susceptible to this happening. After the phone call that I received at the very beginning of the week, actually it was very end of the week, and then we talked again at the very beginning of the week, I noticed it just a touch in our 112 day. And that was actually the field that the grower that was calling in and talking about it. I noticed a field of 112 day on the way into work this morning that we're going to put pictures up of. And the way you can tell it's getting out of it is you'll see little white tips. So those white tips are essentially corn leaves that haven't had the chance to take the sunlight in to create the sugars, so that chlorophyll is not active in that corn plant. And that field that I drove by this morning, you could just see itty bitty little white tips by this time Monday. I don't think that you're going to see any of that at all with the warmer temperatures that we have. So in my opinion, I think we're probably looking at a combination of the three different things together when you're looking at that 112 day with cool weather followed by warm weather, and then there are a lot of group 15s that get used pre and post to try to control weeds in corn.
Give us an example of a group 15.
Group 15 would be a dual, Zidua, Outlook, a whole bunch of them in that group. But harness would be another one. There's a lot of harness that gets sprayed. So rates and temperature and genetics all have a play in this, but the important thing is that the rapid growth syndrome is, while it looks concerning at the time, very, very, very rarely would you ever see yield loss, and that is because you're not going to have stand loss. The leaves are typically young enough that it's going to be something that's lower than the ear leaf that would be affected or wrinkled as it's coming out. So as long as you don't have stand loss due to this rapid growth syndrome, where it gets knotted up and bound so tight that the plant becomes a runt and never can compete with its neighbors, yield loss should be extremely negligible. Other phone calls that I had this week, head scab starting to show up in Iowa on fields that didn't get fungicide. And there's only one incidence that I'd throw a picture up of, so the fungicides are working extremely well. We are starting to get insect feeding going on, multiple calls on wireworm. Kind of wanted to discuss why we're seeing wireworm and what some of the implications of wireworm. I guess Lynn, Dylan, Joe, what are your thoughts on wireworm, and how nervous should guys be at this point in time of the year?
Well, it's the June bug, right? Is the wireworm comes from. So, and I've seen a lot of them this year. So we know that, and it's active in the soil. For 7 years? The larvae or whatever they're called, the worms, that eat. Yeah, you should definitely be concerned because if it's overwhelming, it can definitely hurt a young corn plant. And we've been talking about different ways to control it. We're not using insecticide in the furrow like we used to. And then, of course, seed treatments can take you so far, but they can't take you completely out of it if you got heavy infestation. That's my 2 cents on it, I guess.
Right. Right now, I guess, Lynn, go ahead.
Yeah, from my perspective, what it was around here, we were seeing it more predominantly in the cover crop no-till style of acre, and now it is making its way into the conventional tilled ground. So I guess management practices, it doesn't really matter right now. It's not different. The wireworms aren't differentiating in between the cover crop no-till versus conventional. So basically what that means is across the board, we all need to pay attention to it.
Well, cool, wet, they stay up at the surface, and as soon as we get heat, they go deep. So if we get the heat that we're supposed to next week, it should diminish and go away, because they got to go down deep. I guess they like air conditioning. They don't like heat. So
yeah. So if I'm sitting here at May 30th and I'm looking at a stand of wireworm issues, let's say they dinged up 3,000 plants per acre, and you're now at 30,000 plants per acre. There's no reason to be replanting June 30th with a 30,000 plant per acre. If you're getting down into the 20s where they really started wreaking havoc on the field, and you feel like you wanted to get back in, I don't think there's anything with what you alluded to with the temperatures and the heat. I think that you can get away with not having to put insecticide on the planter or whatever, because just of the timing and the heat that we're going to get to drive them further down. So hopefully we stop seeing the injury over the next week or two here, but there are products that you can put on the planter, whether it be liquid insecticide, dry insecticide, choosing super high insecticide rates on corn, which is something that we wouldn't offer because we run the 250 rate, which is the most economical rate that covers the most amount of insects. It's the biggest bang for the buck, I guess, for an insecticide, because to get true control you would need a product that's probably going to cost close to $20, an additional $20 an acre insecticide on the corn.
If you have really high levels. And again, a lot of times they eat the seed and the seed doesn't even germinate.
Right.
I mean, that's probably the most detrimental part of wireworms, but that's usually only in really high conditions. So.
Right.
And if you're planting into sod, which not too many farmers do, that you're going to have wireworms in any grassy type situations.
And this is because too the trait doesn't control the wireworm, so that's why you have to use some sort of insecticide at some pretty high rates that no one really wants to use anymore.
Right.
And then so once you know that you've got a field with that problem, you could have it for the next 7 years theoretically.
Right. So be thinking about those things as we take notes and get ready for next year already, even though this year's just getting itself kicked off.
And it can affect soybeans too, so it's not just corn.
Yep.
Because I've seen wireworms, when you get that cold, wet, and then the soybeans are slow to come out of the ground, they'll scar up those cotyledons pretty bad and affect soybean stands too.
Yep. And typically the way that you'll see wireworms when you're growing out in the field, or if you're scouting, you're going to see some wilted plants. And they're usually 4 or 5 foot of wilted plants in a row. And they don't look like they're dead yet, but they just look like they're drought stressed. So you see that drought stress, then you go through and start to dig, then you either find a hole that goes through the heart of the plant, the growing point of the plant, or the seed if it has not came out of the ground yet. And that is what will be the death of that corn plant. So
yeah, it's like a drill bit, right?
Yep. So we'll throw up some pictures so that you guys can see what that all looks like. And I don't know who wants to touch on what we got going on here.
Yeah, so back, we first met the original partner in this. Now EarthOptics is a combination between EarthOptics and Pattern Ag. And for those that have listened, have known that we've done some work with Pattern Ag 3 years ago. We did some testing, and every year they come out with their Predictive Ag Report. So basically they take the accumulation of all the data that they have from their testing, and they put it into this.
They're basically DNA soil sampling. In other words, they're actually looking at the DNA in the soil, and if they find that DNA, then either disease, insects, or whatever, the probability of you potentially having that problem is, basically.
Yep. Yeah, I think their process is very similar to how when we get our blood taken, they put it through the rigors, and then they're able to go in and identify. And I think the cool part too is just from a 30,000 foot view from our dealings of it, how much more they have now added in 2025 versus what we have seen. So, and that we know that they've told us that there is so much DNA fragments that they're getting out there that's unidentified, that the soil environment is just it's like the ocean. We have just a microcosm of understanding what's going on. So 2025 Predictive Ag Report, basically that's taking their data, they're putting it into like a heat map and showing the hot spots for all of the pests, all the fertility, the biology, and then we're looking at different diseases as well. And they put it into accumulation, put it into a heat map. So definitely recommend people to take a look at this. It offers some pretty good insight into strategy, and then also some pretty good insight into taking a look at management practices that are going to be needed to potentially overcome some of this. And then they've also layered to looking at different issues and what they have found led to yield loss. Specifically, the one that sticks out to me was potash in soybeans. It was off of their chart. It was literally off the chart. It was up to 14 bushel.
It was the highest limiting factor of all the pests and all the diseases and insects and everything that they saw in soybeans.
Correct. So very, very good insight there. It's one that, like I said, can give us a lot of 20 to 30,000 foot data here to take a look at. they have a lot of data points. I think the last I had heard, they were well over 1 million acres that they're doing testing on. So definitely they have the background information going into the big machine here to spit out the data. Once again, another one that kind of stands out is white mold and what we think as historically of white mold areas, but there's white mold not in that. Thinking of, we're getting used to it now, but most folks, when you talk about Bloomington, Illinois and south, they don't think of that as a white mold hotspot, but white mold showing up there. So definitely something to take a look at. I'm sure we're going to post a link up. It's
free. You can just go on the site and you have to give them your name and you can download the report and you can look at it. And it's interesting. I enjoyed reading it. It just came out too.
Yep, and then they have a great team that we have worked with in the past. That I'm sure if you wanted to get the data for your own individual farm, give them a shout, and they'll have a representative come to you. But a very good insights there. Very deep dive into your soil that can give you some either clues to figure out problems or points to look at to try to improve your yield.
Yeah, the whole idea behind it is if you know what pest potentially is out there or what your limiting factor is, you can make sure you get the right soybean variety, corn hybrid, whatever, fertility, whatever it is that you have to do, you can manage that field by field. This will give you basically a geographic problem where the problems are, but field by field you can soil test and you've got the answers and you can plan accordingly.
One of the other conversations that I had this week with one of our sales managers is Joe's old rules of thumb of soybean planting as it delays as well. And I kind of wanted to go over those really quick. The first rule of thumb that I was always taught was the later you get into the season, every time you cut your rows in half, it is like planting 2 weeks earlier.
Right, in wide rows, yep. So if you plant in 15s today, it would be like planting 30 days earlier in 30-inch rows.
Yep, and then if you drill...
Or 2 weeks, I'm sorry.
Yep,
you
2
said
weeks.
2 weeks.
And then if you cut down to a drill, it's like planting, if you were planting first week in May. So things to definitely be thinking about. I had a customer questioning on replant, whether we go back in with a 15-inch plant or you just go through and cut it with 30s. Typically at this time of year, the narrower the rows, the higher the population is going to help maintain yield.
Yeah, the soybeans are photosensitive, so basically as the days, we're 20 some days away from being the longest day of the year, and at that point then we start going into reproduction, and whatever height you got, you're limiting your height at that point, because we're focusing more on reproduction. So you want to get height, you want to get vegetative growth, and if you can't get vegetative growth with height, then you got to put more plants out there. You got more space. So you increase your population as it gets later. You narrow your rows down, and plant the fullest season soybean you have guts to plant, because that'll get you the most vegetative height. Those are the basics, and there's all kinds of charts and graphs and whatnot that we can share with you if you need to know. But stay with your full season soybeans when it gets late. I mean, go down and talk to anybody at double crops. They don't plant an early bean; they plant a full season bean after wheat because they want to get height. And then height brings node locations and yield in that situation.
Yep, couldn't agree more.
So anything else?
I took one phone call this morning actually to go look at. We're starting to see some planter sins, so it's another one as we're talking about evaluation. Go out and take a look at sidewall compaction. I think got a phone call. Actually, they were concerned with their neighbor. Shocking. A farmer is concerned with their neighbor.
That's the best thing about the farm rural areas. I mean, everybody's looking out for each other. I mean, that's just the way it works.
And like I said, in looking, it was sidewall compaction, and that's something that can or cannot be avoided depending on your situation, if you're up against a window and Mother Nature, but we can discuss that at a further episode. But definitely look at, if you're looking at uneven plant stand, specifically, if you've got a plant at V3 and one at V7 and you kind of see a pattern, take a look at your below ground roots there to see if you've got some development issues.
Get your shovel out and dig some roots, look at it, and then you'll know what's going on. Well, I've been doing a really bad job on jokes, and I've been struggling. And thank God I've got friends, you know what I'm saying? And one of my friends, I can't help thank you enough, is Kathy Brewer from Parole, Iowa, which is near Indianola, just south of Des Moines. Obviously, she's one of our favorite dealers, and also she looks out for us, and she sent me some jokes. So this is going to be really good this week, okay? I guarantee it, okay? Or your money back, you know how that works. A guy broke into a dress shop 3 nights in a row. He told the judge he picked out a dress for his wife and had to return it twice. That's why he broke in 3 times, okay? Okay, this is funny. A man jumped from an airplane and his parachute didn't open. He pulled the rip cord again, but it still didn't work. Then he saw a man soaring upward as he was in free fall downward. And he asked the man if he knew anything about parachutes. To which the high-flying man replied, "No. Do you know anything about gas water heaters?" So I thought that was pretty good. And the last one, we've had a lot of rain. Maybe you've seen a rainbow or two, but have you ever wondered how much does a rainbow weigh? You ever wondered how much a rainbow weighs? It's nothing. It's just pretty light. Okay, we'll leave it at that. That was not Kathy's, that was mine. So I tell you how much better she is at giving me jokes. Anyhow, thanks for watching this week. We hope your family is safe and healthy, and we'll see you next week.